A home office psychiatrist, a reporter mom, 4 kids who couldn't stop getting into trouble. On paper, Growing Pains looked like just another cozy family sitcom about a nice house on Long Island. But behind the scenes, this show survived a recast lead actress before it even aired. A chewing gum sculpture that grew for years. A wedding that got rewritten days before filming. And one cast member's real-life transformation that nearly tore the whole production apart. Growing Pains premiered on ABC in 1985 and ran for 7 seasons, turning Alan Thicke, Joanna Kerns, Kirk Cameron, Tracey Gold, and Jeremy Miller into household names, and later launching a teenage Leonardo DiCaprio into stardom. Today we're counting down 13 weird facts about Growing Pains, and we're ending with the real story of how one actor's off-screen change almost brought the whole show down from the inside. Stick around for that one, because it connects almost everything else on this list. Let's get into it. Number 13. Growing Pains wasn't really an original idea sitting around waiting to be discovered. It was Hollywood chasing a trend, and a fairly specific one at that. Back in 1983, a movie called Mr. Mom became a surprise box office hit. The premise was simple. A father loses his job, ends up staying home to raise the kids, and has to figure out domestic life while his wife goes off to build a career. Audiences loved watching a traditional family structure get flipped upside down, and television executives took notice almost immediately. By 1985, that single movie had quietly reshaped an entire season of network programming. This is where Growing Pains comes in. Dr. Jason Seaver is a successful psychiatrist who makes the unusual decision to move his entire practice into the family home, freeing his wife Maggie to go back to work as a journalist after years away from her career. That setup wasn't just a cute quirk for one episode, it was the emotional engine of the entire series, built directly around the same joke Mr. Mom had already cashed in on 2 years earlier. And Growing Pains wasn't alone. Charles in Charge, Who's the Boss, and Mr. Belvedere all launched around the same period, each one built on some version of the same premise. A man handling the household, while the woman handled the career. ABC, along with its rivals, was simply betting that audiences were ready to laugh at reversed family roles again and again, across multiple shows, in the same handful of years. Growing Pains just happened to be the version that stuck the longest and dug the deepest into audiences' hearts. Number 12. Before Alan Thicke ever put on Dr. Seaver's cardigan and picked up a coffee mug in that home office, ABC seriously considered a very different actor for the role: Bruce Willis. In 1985, the network had 2 rising performers it was genuinely excited about, and it wanted to build a hit show around each one. Bruce Willis was one of them. Alan Thicke, a Canadian talk show host and songwriter trying to break into scripted television, was the other. The problem was that ABC only had 2 obvious vehicles ready to go that season: a family sitcom about a stay-at-home psychiatrist, and a detective drama about a wisecracking private investigator paired with a reluctant partner. Somebody had to end up in each show, and for a while, it genuinely wasn't decided which actor would land where. Eventually, the decision was made, and Willis went on to play David Addison in the detective drama Moonlighting, a role that turned him into a major movie star almost overnight, launching an action hero career that would eventually include films like Die Hard. Thicke went the other direction, stepping into cardigans and slippers as America's favorite television therapist, Dr. Jason Seaver, trading gunfights and one-liners for parenting advice in Long Island suburbia. It's strange to imagine an alternate version of the 1980s where Bruce Willis is raising the Seaver kids and worrying about Mike's report card, while Alan Thicke chases down criminals in a detective agency alongside a witty female partner. But for a brief moment at ABC, both of those futures were sitting on the same table at the same time, and a single scheduling decision at one network sent 2 very different careers down 2 completely different paths, shaping the rest of the decade for both actors. Number 11. The Carol Seaver that millions of fans grew up watching almost wasn't the one originally filmed for the pilot episode. When Growing Pains first went into production, the role of the bookish, overachieving middle child went to an actress named Elizabeth Ward. The producers filmed the entire pilot with Ward in the role, complete with her own version of the Seaver family dynamic, her own chemistry with Kirk Cameron's Mike, and her own take on Carol's personality. But before the show could go to broadcast, that pilot had to survive audience testing, and Ward's performance simply didn't land the way the network hoped. Here's the twist that makes this fact stick. Tracey Gold, the actress who eventually became the definitive Carol Seaver, had actually auditioned for the exact same role during the original casting process and lost the part to Ward. The two actresses already knew each other, having previously worked together on a 1983 ABC after-school special. So, when test audiences rejected Ward's version of Carol, producers didn't have to search far. They went back to Gold, brought her in to replace Ward, and reshot the majority of the pilot scenes so the broadcast version would feature her instead. Most viewers who tuned in on premiere night had no idea any of this happened. The unaired original footage, featuring Elizabeth Ward as Carol Seaver, was eventually included as a bonus feature on a first-season DVD release, giving fans a strange glimpse into an alternate version of the Seaver family that almost became the one everyone remembers. Number 10. Alan Thicke wasn't just an actor who happened to land a hit sitcom. Long before Growing Pains, he had already built an entire career as a professional songwriter, and two of his compositions became instantly recognizable pieces of television history, the theme songs for Different Strokes and The Facts of Life. Given that background, you'd assume the man playing the family patriarch would naturally write the song for his own show too. He didn't. Growing Pains instead used a completely different composition called As Long as We've Got Each Other, a warm, hopeful anthem that had nothing to do with Thicke's own songwriting catalog. That theme song had a surprisingly complicated history of its own. Over the course of the show's 7 seasons, it was re-recorded roughly 9 separate times in different arrangements. Most versions were performed by country pop singer B.J. Thomas, sometimes as a solo track and sometimes as a duet, first alongside Dusty Springfield and later alongside Jennifer Warnes. Later seasons even swapped in an a cappella version for a stretch, and one especially unusual variation was recorded specifically for a 1990 Halloween special episode. So the man most associated with the show's cozy, reassuring family tone, the one who had literally written hit sitcom themes before he ever appeared on camera, had absolutely no hand in creating the song that opened every single episode of his own series. Every week, millions of viewers heard As Long as We've Got Each Other and pictured the Seaver family, never realizing the show's own leading man had built his early career writing almost identical songs for other people's shows, just never for the one that made him famous. Number 9. Mike Seaver's best friend, the lovable dimwit everyone simply called Boner, had a full name doing a lot more comedic work than most kids watching at home ever picked up on. His full name, as revealed on the show, was Richard Milhouse Stabone, an unmistakable echo of President Richard Milhouse Nixon. Layered on top of that presidential reference was the character's nickname itself, which leaned on an older, more innocent slang, meaning of the word boner, referring to a clumsy blunder or an embarrassing mistake. Exactly the kind of thing this particular character was constantly making across 4 seasons of episodes. The role was played by actor Andrew Koenig, who brought his own real-world connection to television royalty into the part. Koenig was the son of Star Trek actor Walter Koenig, best known for playing Pavel Chekhov, and his father was even best man at fellow Star Trek actor George Takei's wedding years later. Andrew appeared as Boner, starting from the show's very first season, gradually developing the character's distinct Brooklyn-accented delivery episode by episode, and remained a fan favorite right up until his character was written off at the end of Season 4, sent away to join the Marine Corps. It's the kind of layered joke that flew completely over the heads of an entire generation of young viewers, quietly baked into a supporting character's paperwork, and never once explained out loud on screen. Boner spent his run on the show as the classic well-meaning sidekick, always a little behind Mike in both grades and street smarts, right down to a memorable storyline where he got locked in his own school locker and chose to climb back in rather than face his next class alone. It's a small, silly detail, but it's exactly the kind of specific character quirk that made a background best friend feel just as memorable as the family at the center of the show. Number 8. This next one is genuinely a little disgusting, and it comes straight from Alan Thicke himself, who shared the story years after the show ended. According to Thicke, the cast kept a very specific, very strange tradition running on set throughout the show's production. Before stepping into a scene, Actors would take whatever piece of chewing gum they happened to be working on and stick it onto a shared, ever-growing mass sitting somewhere nearby on the soundstage. Nobody threw their gum away in a normal trash can. It all went onto the same communal pile, day after day, episode after episode. Over the years, that habit compounded into something almost sculptural. What started as a handful of gum wads slowly grew into an actual mass with real weight and real presence on the set. By the time Thicke told the story publicly, describing how cast members would walk onto the scene and instinctively add to what he called an ever-growing wad, the accumulated gum reportedly weighed about 11 pounds. It's a small, slightly gross, oddly human detail buried inside interviews about a wholesome family sitcom, but it says more about how much time this cast actually spent together, off-camera, day in and day out for years, than almost any polished behind-the-scenes anecdote ever could. Picture it, a cast filming a squeaky clean, family-friendly show about good manners and life lessons, quietly maintaining a growing mound of chewed gum just out of frame the entire time. It's the kind of detail that never would have made it into a press interview during the show's original run, the sort of thing that only surfaces years later, once everyone involved feels comfortable laughing about it publicly. Number 7. Growing pains. Quietly borrowed a production trick that's usually associated with shows that came along much later, long before The Simpsons made its rotating couch gag a signature piece of comedy, and echoing a similar idea used decades earlier by the Dick Van Dyke Show's recurring Ottoman gag. Growing Pains rebuilt its own opening title sequence almost every single season, instead of locking in one static version and reusing it for years. From seasons 2 through 5, the credits weren't just a freeze-frame photo montage. They used newly shot, on-location footage of the cast, filmed specifically for that season's introduction, with far more variation than a typical sitcom would bother investing in. Each version of the sequence closed a little differently too. In seasons 2 and 3, Jason lingered behind the rest of the family for a few seconds before following them inside. In seasons 4 and 5, the show mixed things up further, having a different family member lag behind each time. The season 3 premiere took this even further by tying the opening credits directly into that season's actual storyline, using clips of the entire Seaver family standing in front of the Maui Prince Hotel, interspersed with vintage cast photos from earlier seasons. It's a small production detail most casual viewers never consciously noticed, but it shows a show quietly treating its own intro sequence like living content that needed refreshing, not something to record once during the pilot and simply forget about. Quick pause before we keep going. If you grew up watching this show, drop your favorite Growing Pains character in the comments below. Was it Mike, Carol, Ben, or maybe even Boner? And if you're enjoying this deep dive, go ahead and subscribe, because we've got a lot more 1980s sitcom nostalgia coming. Now, back to the countdown. Number 6. Growing Pains got big enough, fast enough, that even a competing network couldn't resist taking a subtle jab at it, live on one of its own hit shows. NBC's award-winning comedy, The Golden Girls, one of the most acclaimed sitcoms of the entire decade, and airing on a completely different network, included a line specifically poking fun at ABC's rising family sitcom. In the episode titled Family Affair, Dorothy Zbornak, the show's sharp-tongued lead character, delivers a line expressing genuine disbelief at Growing Pains' success, essentially questioning how the show's star had managed to land such a hit series in the first place. On the surface, it's a tiny throwaway joke, delivered by a completely unrelated show, on a completely different network, buried inside a single episode most viewers wouldn't think twice about. But it says a lot about how unexpected Growing Pains' rise actually looked from the outside at the time. This wasn't a friendly reference or a warm crossover wink between two shows on good terms. It was a rival network's flagship comedy, one that was already winning awards and critical praise, taking a direct shot at ABC's breakout hit, right there in the dialogue, in front of millions of viewers who were watching an entirely different show that week. Growing Pains had become successful enough, fast enough, to be worth mocking on national television by writers who had nothing to do with the show at all. That alone tells you something about how quickly it climbed the ratings, and how much attention a fairly modest family sitcom had managed to attract in just a short amount of time on the air. Number 5. Jeremy Miller, who played youngest son Ben Seaver, revealed something years later that genuinely surprised even longtime fans of the show. Growing Pains had become massively popular in China. Speaking about the show's international reach, Miller explained that Growing Pains was one of only 2 American television series allowed to air in China during the 1980s, a remarkably small window for any piece of American pop culture to slip through at that particular moment in history. Out of everything Hollywood was producing at the time, this particular family sitcom about a psychiatrist and his kids on Long Island was one of the very few examples that made it onto Chinese television screens. According to Miller, the level of recognition he personally experienced there outpaced anything he encountered anywhere else in the world, including back home in the United States. He described his following in China as larger than he ever could have expected, calling it a strange and unexpected byproduct of having appeared on one of the only American shows Chinese audiences had access to during that era. Think about that for a second. A sitcom built entirely around a suburban family's daily misadventures somehow became one of the very few pieces of American television allowed through to an enormous international audience, turning an ordinary supporting cast member into a genuine celebrity on the other side of the world, largely because of when and where the show happened to air, rather than anything he personally engineered. Number 4. This next fact is heavier than most of the others on this list, but it's a genuinely important part of the show's real history, and it's been discussed publicly by everyone involved. Tracey Gold, who played Carol Seaver, was privately dealing with an eating disorder during a significant stretch of the show's run, a private struggle that eventually became serious enough to require medical treatment. That real personal difficulty ended up quietly influencing the show's own storylines in its later seasons, even if audiences at the time didn't fully realize what they were watching. In the season 6 episode titled Carol's Carnival, there's a scene where Carol looks into a distorting carnival mirror and describes the warped image staring back at her, a moment that gently touched on body image struggles Gold herself was actually experiencing off camera at the exact same time. It wasn't presented as an issue of the week storyline in the way some sitcoms handle difficult topics. It was subtler than that, almost embedded quietly into an otherwise ordinary episode. By 1992, Gold's condition had become serious enough that she needed to step away from filming entirely to focus on her recovery. The show handled her real-life absence by writing Carol's character out temporarily, explaining it within the story as Carol studying abroad in London. A fictional cover story standing in for a very real personal crisis happening behind the scenes. It's a clear reminder that the line between the Seaver family's fictional story and the actors' real lives became genuinely thin during those final seasons. Number 3. As Growing Pains aged into its later seasons and its ratings began slipping noticeably, producers made a bold, somewhat desperate move to try to rescue the show. They brought in a teenage, largely unknown actor named Leonardo DiCaprio. DiCaprio joined the cast partway through the show's run, in the role of Luke Brower, a homeless teenager the Seaver family unexpectedly takes in off the street, first appearing in the episode Not With My Carol You Don't. The thinking behind the decision was straightforward. Kirk Cameron's Mike Seaver storylines had been running out of fresh material for years. Ratings were sliding, and the producers hoped a new, younger character might pull in a fresh wave of teenage viewers the way Mike himself once had a decade earlier. The plan didn't ultimately save the show. Growing Pains was canceled not long after DiCaprio joined the main cast, with the network deciding the declining numbers simply weren't turning around fast enough. But the decision ended up mattering enormously in an entirely different way. Shortly after Growing Pains wrapped its final season, DiCaprio landed a role in the film This Boy's Life, and from there, his career expanded rapidly into one of the most celebrated in modern Hollywood history. A last-ditch ratings fix for an aging family sitcom, one that ultimately failed at its original goal, ended up being remembered instead as the unlikely launching pad for a future Oscar-winning actor. Marketing around the show even leaned into this later on, with promotional material for reruns, eventually focusing almost entirely on DiCaprio's character, despite him only appearing during the final season. A clear sign of just how much his career had overtaken the show that once gave him one of his very first major roles. Number 2. One of the show's biggest planned storylines got scrapped and completely rewritten at the absolute last minute, and the actress standing at the center of it reportedly found out through her own updated script pages with no advance warning. Julie McCullough joined the cast in season 4 as Julie Costello, a nanny hired by Dr. Seaver, who quickly became Mike Seaver's serious girlfriend. The relationship developed steadily across the season, building toward what was meant to be one of the show's biggest events, an actual on-screen wedding between Mike and Julie. When McCullough arrived on set expecting to film that wedding episode, she was instead handed a brand new script. Instead of walking down the aisle, her character now left Mike standing at the altar, and shortly afterward, Julie Costello was written off the show entirely. It was widely reported at the time that Kirk Cameron had objected strongly to McCullough remaining on the show after learning she had posed for Playboy magazine years before joining the cast, a detail that reportedly conflicted with his personal religious beliefs. Cameron later denied being directly responsible for her firing in his own memoir, and longtime showrunner Dan Gunselman offered a different explanation publicly, stating that the character was written out primarily because keeping Mike in a long-term committed relationship didn't fit where the writers wanted the show to go creatively. Whatever the true reasoning behind the decision, one of the series' most anticipated storylines was abandoned just days before it was scheduled to film, forcing a hurried rewrite that fans still discuss and debate decades later. Number 1. And this is where nearly everything on this list actually connects. Partway through the show's run, Kirk Cameron underwent a genuine, deeply personal transformation. He became a born-again Christian, and unlike many private spiritual journeys, this one didn't stay confined to his life off camera. It started actively reshaping the show itself, script by script, decision by decision. Cameron began pushing hard to remove content he personally considered inappropriate, objecting even to fairly mild scripted innuendo that had previously been standard sitcom material. When producers planned a multi-part storyline, sending the Seaver family traveling through Europe, Cameron reportedly vetoed the idea outright, uncomfortable with filming there. The production adjusted by filming the entire arc on Catalina Island off the coast of California instead, using it to stand in for an entire continent the crew never actually visited. Years later, at a televised cast reunion special, Cameron addressed this period directly and offered a genuine public apology to his former castmates for becoming aggressive and confrontational with them during that stretch of the show's run. Joanna Kerns, who played Maggie Seaver, accepted his apology openly on camera, admitting candidly that, at the time, she had privately wanted to tell him to stop dictating how everyone else on set should feel and believe. And here's the part that ties this entire list together. That exact period of internal tension lines up directly with the Julie McCullough firing controversy, with the show's steadily declining ratings, and with the decision to bring in Leonardo DiCaprio to rebuild the series around a new lead. One actor's personal transformation didn't just change his own performance. It rippled outward through casting decisions, storyline choices, and ultimately the entire creative direction of a show that once defined an era of family television, quietly pushing it toward the cancellation that followed. Growing Pains looked, from the outside, like the most stable, wholesome sitcom on the air throughout the entire 1980s. Behind the scenes, especially in its final years, it was anything but. So, that's Growing Pains, a show born out of a Hollywood trend, held together by a chewing gum sculpture and 9 different theme song recordings, and ultimately reshaped by real personal struggles happening just off camera, out of view of the millions of families watching it every week. It succeeded because underneath all the sitcom jokes and reversed family roles, it was a genuinely relatable family, one audiences invited into their living rooms for 7 straight years. But its real story, the one happening between takes and behind closed dressing room doors, was full of recast roles, quiet crossovers between fiction and real life, and cast conflict that shaped the show just as much as any finished script ever did. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. As long as we've got each other, we've got the world spinning right in our hands. See you in the next video.